us spoke with students at Dawson College. Here's what they had to say about their experiences searching for work.
I was looking for a part-time job. I applied to maybe like 10 spots, and I got interviews with a bunch of them. They never called back because they're always like, oh, like you already have a team, or it's off season, we're not really looking for anybody. But then I hear everywhere like there's a shortage of working, like there's not enough employees, and it's just really ironic because when you try to look for a job, you don't always get it. So I went back to my old job, and it's the only one that could take me, so I just stayed with them. But now if I try to look for another job, I have my friend who's looking for jobs downtown, like everywhere, and she still hasn't gotten an answer back. So yeah, it's really hard. There's always some anxiety when you go and apply for a job because having experienced it before, you're not sure, even if your CV is really good, or even if you have a good profile, the interview went well, there's always a doubt. You never know if you're gonna get it or not.
I've applied to so many places and I don't get responses back because I can't. And they're not looking for the availabilities that I'm giving. I'm a person that struggles tremendously with anxiety, so when I have to face new people, I'm like, here, take my CV, but like I'm already nervous in general, so it already gives me a bad impression, I guess. But it's not on purpose. But I'm a good worker. I don't want to show them that, but it's hard to get that first chance when they're not going to give you that.
I had made my CV and sent it to a couple of places downtown, like at the Atwater Market and such. And the schedules that they offered me just didn't work out for me, and then I kind of lost motivation after that, and it was hard for me to continue finding a job.
I tried to find a lot of restaurant jobs because I want to try going in the restaurant field. But even with my restaurant experience, I feel like maybe just because of the season or something like that, it's just they haven't been hiring a lot, no matter how many restaurants I went to. We're downtown, a lot of people, places like near where I live, and a lot of places just don't seem like they're hiring right now.
Live now to April 4th. She's a school outreach worker and employment counselor at the Centre-Jeunesse Emploi in West Island. She specializes in helping young adults with job searches. Good morning. Thanks for coming in.
Hi, Sean. Thanks for having me here.
We just heard the voices of some young people sharing their challenges in finding jobs. What are your thoughts on the difficulties they've mentioned?
I feel like I could have worked with those young adults already, hearing their stories. I think right now we're in such a transitional time for the job market for everyone, young people, middle-aged and onward, but especially for, I think, younger populations coming out of the pandemic, because all of our structures in place for support have been kind of jumbled around. So school structures have changed, so is the job market. We're finding that hybrid models work, or there's a huge boom in the service industry as our clients are finding, but yet, like, where are these jobs? How do we find them?
Yeah, so you're hearing some of the same things.
Yes. Yeah.
How do the current needs compare to previous years?
Well, I mean, every year has trends, right? So one of the students talked about how there just seems to be nothing around. January, February tends to be kind of a low period anyway for jobs. So there's waves, as we like to call them. I think we're kind of evening out again post this sort of holdup that we had in 20 and 2021. So now it's definitely not the best time to look for a job. So that can be especially discouraging, I think, to job searchers.
Right. So when would be the best time for job searchers? Does it depend on the field they're looking to get into or the type of work they want to do?
Field definitely matters. So seasonal, for example, summertime, golf courses. I have a client who works for a golf course, and they are, booked from March to November, and also in school and able to do that. Summer camps, say for younger job seekers who want to work with the YMCAs of Quebec. Service industries like food service, that's probably year-round. I mean, I think, restaurants, fast food chains are always looking for students to work for them, but the secret is like how to get those jobs.
Right. And how do you explain the fact that the young people we heard in those sound bites say that are having trouble finding jobs, but at the same time we're hearing so much about labor shortages? How do you explain the two?
Well, I'm not a labor market specialist, but I see that there's just such a high demand and a high volume, and somehow there's a gap between that. I think that the service industry is in a rush to kind of fill positions. There's a high turnover rate. Sometimes it has to do with salary. Sometimes it has to do with the schedules. When you're a student, your schedule is changing every semester, right? Or every term. And so there's a degree of adaptability that both parties need to have. Yeah, it's a lot of variables at play.
And I want to ask you about that adaptability because one of the other things I heard in that soundbite is the availability versus the kind of schedule the job requires. So, what kind of conversations, or how would you approach that conversation with the job seeker?
Well, I think the priority is to understand why the job seeker wants a job. So is it because they want money to spend on the weekend? Is it for food security? Are they supporting themselves, a family, and whatnot? And from that point, it's ideal to build a profile first rather than just kind of fling your CV out there, because that can just be so discouraging. So once we understand, okay, what this job seeker is looking for, then we look at the skills they have already and the kinds of jobs that are available out there that would answer those skills. Schedule is sort of one of the last conversations that you would have with a potential employer. If you come out of the gate saying, I love this job, but I can only work on Sundays, you're really limiting yourself.
I was just going to ask, is there a conversation to have realistic expectations about what a schedule is? The idea of starting somewhere and not getting that you're not going to get the schedule that you want when you start off, whatever job you do.
Well, there's that. We all have the dream schedule we'd love to have, and then the reality. And so concessions need to be made on both sides. Often, when an employer is posting a job, the kinds of information that should be there to make it reliable and legitimate is what kind of hours they're looking for, salary expectations, if location, if none of that is there and it's just, hey, we're looking for someone to work 4 days a week, random hours, no salary, like I would say maybe look for something more specific. It's when you're handing in your CV, you're not necessarily always handing in a cover letter, right? So you don't have the opportunity to say when you can work. So the first step is, will they respond to your resume? And the employer is assuming that the reason you're responding to this job posting is because you could work the hours that they're advertising. And if they aren't advertising hours but you think you'd really like the job, there's no harm in inquiring. Sometimes it's difficult to inquire. So for bigger chains like say McDonald's, Tim Hortons, they have portals through which you apply, Chapters Indigo also. So you don't really get to talk to anyone. You're kind of putting your CV up there, and a robot's looking at it before HR does. But you can always go in also to a
Should you
place.
put a cover letter in your CV?
It depends. If you're applying through portals, they'll let you know.
Okay.
And it's always optional. I mean, if you do have a cover letter, that is an opportunity to explain your situation and say, look, I would be available for these hours and these days. I think you really have to look employer by employer. It can be tedious to find a job because you really want to look at what they're asking for and provide that.
In the case of a portal, like you said, that if you just put in your resume, you put in your cover letter, if need be, is there an opportunity to cold call and say, hey, did you get my resume? I know because some places, if it's a portal, it's because there's chains and there's different locations, but is there an opportunity sometimes to just directly call a specific location to say, hey, I'd really like to work here, or I sent my resume, but I'd really like to work at this store. Do you have any availability? Do you have are you looking to hire?
Absolutely, and we definitely encourage our clients to do that because sometimes you'll see a store or restaurant that has a sign in their window, help wanted. I see that with pharmacies a lot, Jean Coutu's and Found My Please. And so yes, go in, hand your CV in there. Always make sure you ask for the manager when you hand it in rather than just then giving it to an employee who's sort of there serving the public and overwhelmed because they just might forget. It might go under the counter and there it stays forever. You definitely want to do follow-ups, not like the next day, give it a bit of time, a week or two afterward if you're really, motivated for this job and you want to show your face.
Yeah.
We remember faces, so.
We heard earlier from one student who said she has social anxiety. What advice would you have for her?
I hear that a lot. I have social anxiety for that matter. I think it's something that we learn how to cope with, and one of the services that we offer for our clients, for our youth, includes social reintegration, workshops where they can discover themselves, figure out who they are in the workforce, work with peers. So it's always going to be a little bit of a stressful situation going for an interview, Zoom interview versus in-person interview, different set of skills that you're using. So you can watch videos on how to, work with the public, how to address the public, practice with your friends, come see us, and take free workshops and services.
Sure. I mean, it's not right having to speak to people and have to answer questions and talk about yourself too, because you are when you're applying for a job, to a certain extent, you're pitching and you're telling people this is why you need to hire me.
Yeah.
Let's talk about the resume right now. Can you give some examples of do's and don'ts for resumes?
Well, resume, you'd like to keep it short. 1 page if you can, 2 pages tops. I think the benefit of an early, career job seeker is you don't have to worry about overflowing. You can keep your information to 1 page. Piece of advice we give to our clients is don't put your address, like your physical, your street and the street number. Put the city, like Pointe Claire, Quebec, but imagine you drop your CV on the ground and then some weirdo picks it up and they have your address, they could show up at your house. So it's just a sort of privacy issue. On a resume, you want to have your most relevant experience. There's different kinds of CVs, chronological, skills-based. So if you don't have a big job history, this is something that clients feel nervous about, I find. They're worried that they don't have enough to put on a resume. And this is why services like ours can be beneficial to them, because we can walk them through, okay, what skills do you have? What have you done? Maybe you haven't had 5 jobs, but you babysat for a summer. So what are some of the skills that go into babysitting? It's not just watching kids, right? It's ability to think on your feet, ability to multitask. And so these skills are transferable to other jobs. So it's, again, when you're populating your CV for the first time or very early on, sorry, I keep saying CV and resume, interchangeable, but when you're populating your resume for the first time, you want to include some of the skills, maybe 5 skills, 5 things that objectively you are good at.
Okay.
And customize it for every job, because that's, again, really read what the job posting is asking for and design your resume around that. Doesn't mean to make things up, and if you, for example, hate multitasking, then don't put multitasking as one of your skills. It's like that's one of the terms we hear so much now, but and I think that can intimidate some job seekers, like, well, I don't know if I can multitask, what is that?
Let me ask you this, because and it sounds random, but what kind of conversations do you have with the people you work with around the email address they use?
Oh, right, because there's a Gmail address, school addresses, professional addresses. You know what? Again, when you're just starting off, Gmail might be what you have, or Yahoo, or Outlook. But I wouldn't, put something like joeissexy@gmail.com or something. You keep that for your, private life, and otherwise maybe open another Gmail account with your first and last name, and sometimes it's taken up, so you might add a number in there. Gmail will be like, Joe White 75. But yeah, keep it professional. Think of it's kind of like a book title. We see it and we already make our decisions before we look any further.
Right. Where can people find you if they need more information?
So we're at Centre-Jeunesse Emploi in the West Island on 52 Hymas. If you'd like to email us, it's info@CJE Westisle, so OUESTILE .qc.ca, and our website is www.cjewestisle.qc.ca.
All right, thanks for joining us this morning.
Thanks for having me.
That is April Fort. She's a school outreach worker and employment counselor at the Centre-Jeunesse Emploi in the West Island, and we want to hear from you. Tell me about your job experiences, your challenges finding a job. 514-566-9066. What worked for you? What didn't work? We want to hear from you. 6:50.